What happens when greed intertwines with madness? In the dark shadows of post-war London, one man transformed from a petty con artist into a notorious killer, earning him the grim title of the Acid Bath Killer. John George Hayes' chilling story unfolds through a series of gruesome murders, where he used sulfuric acid to erase his victims and their traces. Join us as we delve into this horrifying tale of deception and death. Introduction to John George Hay. John George Hay, infamously known as the Acid Bath Murderer, is one of Britain's most notorious serial killers. Born in 1909 in Stamford, England, he grew up in a strict religious environment as part of the Plymouth Brethren. This upbringing, marked by isolation and repression, shaped his later criminal behavior. Hay's early life was characterized by a desire for wealth and status, which led him down a path of deceit and ultimately to murder. His crimes, committed in the late 1940s, involved the horrific act of dissolving his victims' bodies in sulfuric acid, an attempt to evade capture by eliminating any evidence of his heinous acts. Early life and background. John George Hay's childhood was steeped in strict religious doctrine, which heavily influenced his psyche. His parents, John Robert and Emily Hay, enforced a rigid lifestyle that isolated him from peers, leading to feelings of resentment and rebellion. Raised in a household where play was forbidden, Hay found solace in music and became an assistant organist at Wakefield Cathedral. However, upon leaving school, he struggled to find fulfillment in conventional employment. Instead, he resorted to petty crime, including forgery and fraud, as a means to achieve the luxurious lifestyle he craved. His early experiences of rejection and his yearning for material wealth set the stage for his eventual transformation into a calculated murderer. The shift from fraud to murder. Hay's criminal career began with fraud and petty theft, but quickly escalated to murder after he developed a chilling plan while imprisoned. During his time in Lincoln Prison, he became fascinated with the idea that a murder could go undetected if there was no body left behind. This notion led him to experiment with sulfuric acid, testing its effectiveness on small animals. Upon his release, Hay applied this sinister knowledge to real-life scenarios, targeting individuals who were wealthy yet vulnerable. His shift from fraud to murder marked a significant turning point. He no longer sought mere financial gain through deception, but instead resorted to cold-blooded killings to secure wealth and eliminate witnesses. Modus operandi: the use of sulfuric acid. Hay's method of disposing of his victims was both gruesome and calculated. He would lure them into his workshop under various pretexts before committing murder, usually by shooting or bludgeoning them. The most notorious aspect of his crimes was his use of sulfuric acid to dissolve their bodies. Believing that if there was no body, there could be no conviction, Hay meticulously experimented with acid on small animals before applying it to human remains. After killing his victims, he would place their bodies into large drums filled with acid, effectively erasing any trace of their existence. This method not only showcased Hay's cold pragmatism, but also reflected his deep-seated desire to evade justice at all costs. Victims, profiles, and circumstances. Hay's victims were primarily individuals he befriended who had financial assets he coveted. His first known victim was Donald McSwan, a former employer whose disappearance went unnoticed for some time due to Hay's manipulative tactics. Following McSwan, he murdered both of McSwan's elderly parents when they began questioning their son's whereabouts. Other victims included Dr. Archie Henderson and his wife Rose, whom Hay lured under false pretenses related to their wealth. Each victim was chosen for their isolation or lack of close connections that might raise alarms about their sudden disappearances. This pattern reveals not only Hay's predatory nature, but also highlights the tragic stories of individuals whose lives were cut short by his insatiable greed and ruthlessness. The investigation: how Hay was caught. The investigation into John George Hay's crimes began with the disappearance of Olive Duran Deacon in February 1949. Her friends grew concerned when she failed to return home, prompting them to report her missing. Detectives soon discovered that Hay had pawned items belonging to her, raising suspicions. After days of intense interrogation, Hay confessed to murdering Duran Deacon and claimed to have dissolved her body in sulfuric acid. This confession led investigators to connect him with 5 other murders, all involving similar methods of body disposal. A search of his workshop revealed human remains, including gallstones and a pelvic bone, which provided crucial evidence against him. The combination of his confession and physical evidence solidified the case, leading to his arrest and subsequent trial for multiple murders. Trial and conviction. John George Hay's trial commenced on July 18, 1949, at Lewis Assizes, drawing significant public attention due to the gruesome nature of his crimes. The prosecution, led by the Attorney General, presented compelling evidence linking Hay to the murders of Olive Duran Deacon and 5 other victims. Although he pleaded insanity, claiming vivid dreams and a history of blood obsession, the jury quickly dismissed this defense. Witnesses testified about his calm demeanor and lack of remorse, which painted a picture of a calculating killer rather than a mentally unstable individual. After deliberating for only minutes, the jury found him guilty. On August 10, 1949, Hay was executed by hanging, marking a swift conclusion to one of Britain's most notorious murder cases. Public reaction and media coverage. The public reaction to John George Hay's trial was one of horror and fascination. Newspapers extensively covered the proceedings, often sensationalizing details about his gruesome methods and alleged motivations. The media labeled him as a vampire killer after he claimed to have drained his victims' blood, further fueling public intrigue. The trial was so high-profile that the editor of the Daily Mirror was imprisoned for contempt of court after prematurely labeling Hay a murderer before the jury's decision. This intense media scrutiny not only highlighted society's morbid curiosity about serial killers, but also raised ethical questions about how such cases are reported. Legacy of the Acid Bath Murders. The legacy of John George Hay extends beyond his execution. It has profoundly influenced public perception of serial killers in Britain. His chilling methods, dissolving bodies in acid, sparked widespread horror and became emblematic of the era's fears regarding crime and morality. The case prompted discussions about criminal psychology and the effectiveness of law enforcement in handling such heinous acts. Additionally, it inspired numerous books, films, and documentaries that explore not only Hay's life, but also the broader implications of his actions on society's understanding of evil. The acid bath murders remain a cautionary tale about the potential for ordinary individuals to commit extraordinary atrocities when driven by greed and desperation. Psychological profile of a serial killer. John George Hay's psychological profile reveals a complex interplay between his upbringing and his criminal behavior. Raised in a strict religious environment, he struggled with feelings of isolation and inadequacy throughout his life. His early experiences with fraud suggest an underlying need for control and validation, which escalated into violent behavior as he sought financial gain through murder. Experts suggest that Hay exhibited traits commonly associated with psychopathy, including superficial charm, manipulativeness, and a lack of remorse for his actions. His claims about drinking blood may indicate a desire for power over life and death, or an attempt to rationalize his horrific acts. Understanding Hay's psyche offers insight into how societal factors can contribute to the emergence of serial killers. Thank you for joining us in this exploration of true crime. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more chilling tales from the world of true crime.